Magic the Gathering is returning to the world of Lorwyn, but this one's going to be tricky. Trying to match the level of the original Lorwyn block is going to be quite the feat. Greetings, hatchlings! We are here to talk about a new development in the world of Magic the Gathering. We're going to be going back to the world of Lorwyn. Now, those of you who have been following me on the channel for a long time may realize that this is one of the worlds that I've actually said that I would like for them to return to. There's the world of Mirrodin / New Phyrexia that I would absolutely love for them to return to. So, it has been basically confirmed through a poll that Mark Rosewater did, where a bunch of the fans said, look, like, by weight, most people want to see a return to Lorwyn. But Lorwyn is not going to be an easy plane to return to. For those of you who don't know, because you weren't here back then, Lorwyn did a lot of new and interesting things. And trying to fill those boots, it's not like returning to Ravnica, right? Like what happened on Ravnica was there's the inter-guild turmoil, there's the changing of the guild pact, but otherwise the world is pretty much the same. Well, Lorwyn / Shadowmoor was a very different kind of setup, and the world has fundamentally changed from the last time we've been there. It pretty much has to have, because the world of Lorwyn was basically a place of everlasting light and happiness and just kind of whimsy. There was a duality to the world. It was really cool, actually. I enjoyed the storyline. Obviously, this, if you didn't know, Lorwyn is where they first brought in Planeswalkers cards as well, back before they even had the mythic rarity, back when we only had rare, and now they have the mythic rares where all the Planeswalkers are slotted, but that has nothing to do with the flavor of the world. The flavor of the world was one of light and dark, but not in the normal way where you would have your day and night cycle, where it's like, okay, 24-hour cycle, some light, some darkness. No. Lorwyn was a world that was held in basically like perpetual midsummer. A midsummer nights forever, a midsummer forever, basically kind of deal. And it was interesting. There was the fairy queen Una who was responsible for all of this. She was the one who was causing the Great Aurora to occur. And she was basically stretching each day and each night into 300 years with her fairy power. So when we went to Lorwyn, what we saw was a world, first of all, devoid of humans. There are literally no humans native to the world of Lorwyn, and that's not something we see frequently. It's also where they came up with the tribal concept and made all kinds of tribal spells, literally with tribal in the subtype. It was very much a creature type matters set / block. So you've got Lorwyn, where you've got the 300 years of summer and sunlight with never the sun setting, and then you have Shadowmoor, 300 years of darkness without the sun ever rising. And this was Una's plot altogether. She was a fairy queen that fed on the dream stuffs of people. So basically, she would send her little fairy minions out, and they would bring back the dreams, and yum, 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 and she would eat them all up. So Una manufactured this entire setup, and we had some really interesting contrast between the two worlds of light and dark. The light world was mainly just friendly. Like the races were all kind of mostly benign. Now they were fairly reclusive in terms of the Kithkin just kind of messed around with the Kithkin, the tree folk kind of stuck to themselves, the goblins stayed with the goblins. But each of these tribes had very distinctive personalities. We can do full-on lore videos talking about it in the future. But to give you a rough idea of how some of it worked, you had the goblins, which were basically obsessed with sensation. They just wanted to have extreme taste, extreme noise, extreme everything. They were like 90s kids, extreme Doritos, that kind of thing, right? The world itself, the light world of Lorwyn, was ruled over by the elves. And it was interesting because normally elves are your nature aligned fairly. When you think of elves, you think of goodness, right? You don't think of them being evil. Well, the elves in Lorwyn were actually evil. They were the ones that ruled over the plane, and basically they ruled through a system of beauty, where the more beautiful you were, the more power you had, And the less attractive you were, the less valuable you were, down to the point where really ugly members of elven society were sometimes just destroyed outright. They called them eye blights. And that's also what they call every race of anything that wasn't an elf was considered an eye blight. And they were all basically considered, like, if you want to use human terms, they were considered to be subhumans. It doesn't matter what race you are, you don't matter. That's how the elves operated. So it was interesting to see them as these haughty kind of overlords, and the terminology they used for themselves, the best, like they had terms like immaculate all the way up to perfect, where perfect were the most flawless, beautiful elves that got to rule over all of elven society and could do whatever they wanted with lower ranked elves. It was a very, very weird, it's like the worship of beauty, but taken to an absolute extreme, right? And then you have the darkness world of Shadowmoor, which is the other part of Lorwyn, because Lorwyn was a 4-set block. You had Lorwyn and then the subset that goes with it, and then you have Shadowmoor and the subset that goes with it, Morningtide and Eventide. The whole flavor behind it was absolutely fantastic. Now, there were some beings that weren't affected by the Great Aurora in the same way. Most races, most creatures would not be able to maintain their memories of the previous world. So when it switched from a light world to a dark world, everybody who lived there thought that they had always dwelt in darkness, and when they lived in the light world, they thought they had always dwelt in light. Now, this wasn't the same for giants. Giants are long-lived, have long memories, so some of the giants would actually be able to remember previous existences. And that's why you have cards like Roisin Meanderer, where she specifically was aware of the difference between the worlds, but they took her, like what she said, as the ravings of a mad person, right? That's how they looked at it. But the contrast, the way that the races changed from the light world to the dark world, you'd have the Kithkin going from, the Kithkin had this thing called the thought weft, where all of their minds were interconnected. They almost had like a psychic hive mind. And when you went to the world of Shadowmoor, it became this very xenophobic, like they ended up having these pale bug eyes. They're these short little hobbit-style creatures that look fairly friendly in Lorwyn. When you move over to the Shadowmoor world, they all have these big like bug eyes for like living in the darkness, and they're all very xenophobic. They wanted nothing to do with races that weren't specifically theirs. They were just like, no, 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 no. Destroy anybody who's not of our kind. Stay away from us. Most of the races switched from happy-go-lucky good races into evil races, and even the goblins in the light world were really just kind of like, I'm gonna steal the pie off your windowsill. That was the level of goblin evil, like, oh, I got your pie, tee-hee-hee-hee. And then when you switched over to the darkness world, then they turned into the goblins that we kind of know on most worlds, where they're more vicious and destructive and willing to end people. They're not the friendly, like, oh, let's just swipe your pie, tee-hee-hee, I'm playing a prank on you. The elves actually switched from being the evil rulers of the plane over into being like the last guardians of nature and like trying to like keep some purity going on in the world. So there's a really interesting contrast between all of these races. But what happened was, most of the time, except for one instance, so not most of the time, every time except for once, the Great Aurora, which was the shift from the light world into the dark world, happened on Una's schedule through her causation. Every 300 years, she would make this happen for her own purposes. But there came a time where a Great Aurora was coming that was not under the control of Una, and so she ended up putting her memories into an actual elven creature so that she could pull them back to herself after the Aurora had happened. But it turns out when the Aurora went off that it didn't affect Una, even though she was afraid it was going to. But without getting into all the major details, at the end of the storyline for the Lorwyn block, the Great Aurora Una, it's all defeated. It's no longer a thing. And Lorwyn is returned to its normal night and day cycle, which obviously radically changes the entire perspective of the plane, right? If you were a planeswalker visiting this plane in the past, you would show up for 300 years. It would be this midsummer revel. And then the other 300 years, it's this world of gloomy darkness where in the light world, you'd see these flame elementals, the flamekins, and they burn bright. And in the shadow world, they're all these dark, barely having any flame left, crumbling away, rotting cinders. That was a really interesting contrast, actually. The flamekin to the cinders, and then they became partially black-aligned creatures. That's why you can see Aisling in her red form and Aisling in her black form. I really enjoyed the duality of Lorwyn, but we're going back now with the different world. We don't have that duality anymore. So what does Lorwyn look like when it has a normal day and night cycle? Are the races the same? Which side are they, when they return, are we going to have a situation where they choose one of the sides and put the races on that side? Or are we going to see a fundamental difference in how all the races operate? Because before, they were used to having hundreds and hundreds of years of light and hundreds of years of darkness, with a memory wipe happening each time with the Great Aurora. The only things really being immune to that were the giants to a degree and the fairies, which were servants of Una. Are there even fairies anymore without Una and the Great Aurora? How does Lorwyn look? How long has it been since we've been there? What kind of stories are they going to unravel for it? I am genuinely interested because there's a lot they can do with it, but also I do have trepidation because there's a lot that they could screw up with it. If they just turn it into another, check it out, it's Bolus versus the Gatewatch again. The Gatewatch showed up and they're fighting the same villains they're used to. I am genuinely afraid that they will turn it into the same kind of homogenous muck that they've turned a lot of recent Magic into. I mean, look at when they went back to Ravnica. They were like, check it out, it's Ravnica, but it's autumn this time. Look, there's orange leaves, you guys. So I am worried that they're going to give it that kind of a treatment. We'll see. There's a lot of potential, but a lot of risk too. So let me know what you guys think about the whole concept of going back to Lorwyn. Are you excited about it? Do you even know much about Lorwyn? And I will roll the golden scroll. The people who have my back on Patreon or through channel memberships. Thanks for supporting my channel, ballers. Makes a huge difference because YouTube don't give me squat in terms of the cash on. So thanks for having my back, and I will see you people later.
Hail to the king, baby.